The last big issue that we have, and it's probably the biggest one, is that it's hard to be devoted to Christ when we're so devoted to ourselves. It's hard to be devoted to Christ when we're so devoted to ourselves. For a lot of us, the problem we have isn't that we're not devoted to anything, it's that we're so devoted to worthless things that there isn't any more time to be devoted to anything that matters. We're devoted to all kinds of just junk in our life, and if we broke it down and we're really honest, the centerpiece and the core of that would be a devotion to ourselves. I just read this article about this guy who committed and devoted himself to watching every single Friends episode without taking a break. I think only Faith's done that. Where's Faith? Yeah. Faith, you can appreciate that. Maybe Christine too, I don't know, who love Friends. That was like 84 straight hours of Friends. You know what's funny about it is this guy talked about his experience, and he said, like, I think it was like somewhere around 70 hours in, he started hallucinating. And he like thought he was going crazy. And I was like, here's a tip. You are crazy. You watched 84 hours of Friends, you know? That's nuts. This guy's wasted 3.5 days of his life watching television. That's kind of normal, though. I mean, all the research that's out today tells us that the average American spends the most amount of our leisure time watching TV, some 2+ hours of television every single day. And that's average. That's not like, I mean, some of you guys, 2.5 hours would be a good day. But everybody's talking about how bad this is for us, too. This isn't like a new idea. They talk about how it's bad for our health, it's bad for our relationships, it doesn't help us learn, it's bad for our souls. I mean, you got magazines like People and Teen and shows like MTV that are harping on that. That's like having an alcoholic tell you drink too much. That's bad, okay? If they're telling you that, it's bad. They're the world and they're telling you this stuff. But we keep doing that, and that's just one thing. Think about all the ways that you devote your time, energy, and resources, all the things that you devote them to. I know you guys probably know some people like this. You probably are like this. I love talking to folks that like camp outside to wait for stuff. I don't know, maybe you guys, I just would never do it. I'm too stubborn or something. But I'll talk to these guys, and they've camped outside for sometimes more than a day. And it could be freezing cold. It could be super hot. It could rain, snow on them, sleet, whatever else. And that's just so they could get like some concert tickets or something. Or like some tickets to a sporting event, or like an Xbox or a new Wii that just came out. We'll stand in line for hours to wait to watch a new movie that just came out, or to ride on a roller coaster. How many of you guys are those people that on like, right, that day after Thanksgiving, you get up at like 3 in the morning so you can get some deals on some shoes or something? You know you are if you don't raise your hand. You do that. Tons of people do that. Now listen to me, I'm not saying that you should never do any of those things, okay? I'm not saying that you shouldn't live. I'm just wondering how our devotion to Christ compares with our devotion to self. I'm wondering if what we're really after most of the time is a Christianity without Christ. Could I really say that my devotion is not to me, not to my plans and my hopes and my dreams and my successes and my wants and my needs and my experiences? It's my life. Could I say that? Could you? You see, the response of a people who know they've been saved by the grace of God here in Acts, who know they've been forgiven, who know they've been set free, who know they have an eternity that's secured, is they devote themselves to Jesus. And they're all in for that. Because what else would somebody do with a gift like that from God? What else would somebody do who knows that they've been saved by nothing they ever did, but by the sheer love of God for them? What else would they do? All of our devotion was meant to be for Christ. It was the mark of the first Christians. It's meant to be our mark today. You know, not only is it remarkable that these first Christians, that they devoted their life to Christ, but the next thing that we see here is also pretty remarkable, at least as it compares to most of how Christianity works today. And it's the very next word. It says themselves. They devoted themselves. That's just nuts. See, devotion involves a choice. To devote yourself is to give yourself. Devotion has to be given, and more than that, it has to be wholehearted. A half-hearted commitment to something would never, ever qualify as a devotion. To be devoted is to be completely given. Sadly, for most of the time, most of how it works in the church is we don't have to really give much of ourselves at all. We buy into the idea that somebody else needs to do it for us. So this idea is not only a countercultural idea, this is a counter-church idea. Churches run after people to keep them committed, keep them serving, keep them giving, keep them devoted. It's kind of like the job of church leaders is to keep saving Christians so they stay devoted to Christ. We have programs and processes and all these things in place. Chase you down, hunt you down, keep you in. But for most of us, we tend to see ourselves in the church the same way we see ourselves in the world, and we're the consumer, right? It is for us. And so we go to church and we ask the question, what is this church doing for me? And we ask, how are they meeting my needs? And we ask, how are they reaching out to me? And the fact is that if we don't think they're doing a really good job, we'll just go somewhere else anyways. Because it's for me. It's about me. It's somebody else's job. It's not my responsibility. It's the pastor's job. That's why he gets paid. Maybe we're getting it wrong in church. See, what's really crazy about that is when you read about Jesus, we see that Jesus didn't spend a whole lot of time trying to coax people and run down and hunt down people to keep them following after him. In fact, it kind of seems like Jesus goes out of his way a little bit to weed out the folks who are really in from the people who are just kind of there for the show. From the people who just kind of think he's neat, you know. This guy does some cool tricks. He makes some water into wine. You know, he multiplies a lot of bread. This is a cool guy, you know. I could hang out with him. You know, he'd be cool at a party. But we see Jesus all the time as people come to him and say, hey, let me follow you. Only first, I got to do this thing real quick. The funny thing is the stuff they had to do really quick was pretty significant. It was like, my dad died. I got to go bury him. We'd all think, that sounds pretty good. Jesus is like, look, you go bury him. Do that, but don't follow me then. Because there isn't anything that you're about to do that's more important than you being completely devoted to me. Imagine that. I mean, usually our response to God is like, God, I would, but I got to finish this game on PlayStation. Yeah, the Bears game's on. You know? Even though we could like DVR it and watch it later, which how many of you guys are doing that right now? See? You know? We have a million worse excuses for not following Jesus than these guys had. But Jesus was all about those who were completely devoted to him. And here in the beginning of the church of Acts, we see they're not chasing people either. They're not handing out cards. They're not sending emails. They're not making phone calls and doing text messages. Never mind the fact they didn't have those. But they weren't running down trying to get people. It says they all devoted themselves. Imagine that. Imagine a community of people who themselves were devoted and committed to Christ, who themselves put themselves in there to be all in. Imagine a people who saw the responsibility of their faith and their growth and their relationship with God as their job. That is crazy.